houses are square.
It amazes me that whatever house we live in this country, whether old or new, big or small, they're all based off pretty much the same design. And it's a design from over 150 years ago. It owes more to the steam age than the space age. You've got kitchens, downstairs toilets, hundreds of doors, bedrooms, more bedrooms. The results are we end up with very small divided spaces, miles of corridor, and very little light. The way we live has changed from 150 years ago. More people live alone, single people share houses, people work from home. In this day and age, our lives are constantly changing, and we need our houses to do the same. Even the Conservative Party have acknowledged that we are not all married with 2.4 children. So why haven't house builders? So we're spending longer living in unsuitable houses, and our national obsession with DIY and TV makeover shows can't make up for the fact they're the wrong shape. The problem is that our houses are just not flexible. Well, I'm going to show you houses that can flex to your changing needs. From the outside, you'd have no idea that this understated timber house in the back streets of London is a totally flexible living environment. But just come and have a look at this. A few years ago, Marcus Lee bought a plot of land on a muddy lane and set about designing and building his own home. When he sat down to think about it, making it flexible became a big priority, so that in years to come it would adapt to his changing needs. The house was originally inhabited by Marcus and his first wife, then 2 children, then Marcus as a single parent, then with his new partner and a baby girl, all of that lot plus a workshop in the basement. Marcus then sold the house to this couple, who spread out to create an idyllic, spacious home. Luckily, as Marcus had designed the house to be flexible, the space adapted to these changing needs without major building work. So having set out to make a very flexible house, he came up with a simple but very clever system. The only thing that's really fixed is the staircase. Everything else can move and be reconfigured as your needs and desires change over time. This and this is what hold the house up. The floors and the walls are not taking structural loading, so you can pull them out or put them in. It really makes no difference to the way the house actually stands up. So this is the key to the design, and why it's so unlike a Victorian house. The walls are not holding up the roof, so they can be taken out and moved, creating new rooms without bringing the house down. Neil and Brookie swapped their Victorian house for this open plan space, and they couldn't be happier.
The thing about those Victorian houses is, maybe it's sort of being gay in a way, I don't know, but you notice you're living in a Victorian way, whether you want to or not. Like, you do have that, there's lots of little rooms for the kids, and the dining room separate from the kitchen, and that whole, I hate all that. I mean, I think the Victorian family home is built for Victorian family values.
Because the whole beauty of this house is kind of like loft living in vertical.
Wherever you look, you have these wonderful views, like through there I can see to the bedroom, down there to the garden, and here I'm standing on these amazing wooden grills, which are just quite exciting every time you walk across them. It's kind of like, you kind of want to bit kind of tenterhooks because you might fall through it. So this is the main fixed thing in the house, the staircase, and it's around this that the whole house revolves. So when the house was originally built, there was a floor here, the fire was over there, that was the master bedroom, that was a nursery, but as things changed, that was no longer necessary. So they just pulled the floor out, moved the fire across, and made this beautiful double-height space over the kitchen table.
It may take a weekend and a bit of carpentry skills to move a wall. It doesn't happen at the touch of a button. But you don't have to call in jobs-worth structural engineers and teams of council surveyors to approve the work.
And, you know, I don't have anything in common with Victorians. You know what I mean? Pretty much.
Right. Well, who does? You know.
We all live under. I live in a little terrace.
Who dines? When did you last dine? Christmas Day.
Christmas Day. I think it was the last.
At your parents' house.
No one does it. The Lee House is certainly very beautiful, but it's a one-off and it doesn't really offer much hope for the rest of us. However, this house has taken those ideas, the ideas of flexibility, and evolved them and applied them to the ideas of mass housing.
Built in South Wales, this is a prototype for a house of the future, the result of a nationwide architectural competition.
The design of this house challenges the traditional ideas of home in three main ways. The first is environmentally. You have very high levels of insulation.
The walls have 20 centimetres of sheep's wool. The ceiling has 20 centimetres of recycled paper, making it super insulated. Most materials used in the house are from natural origins, so there are no polyurethanes and formaldehydes to poison the air.
The second way it challenges the traditional house is through accessibility for people with impaired mobility. So, for example, the doors are all wide enough for a wheelchair. It's all level through there. All the ground floor is level, so you don't have a problem with getting round. There's no awkward steps to trip on. And as you get older and the stairs become too much, there's a lift here, there's a hole that's put through the floor. It's designed to take this lift. So normally a lot of people when they get older have to leave the houses they're in. But here the house can change so you don't have to go.
The final and most important point is flexibility.
The house is made of a structural timber frame. This is green oak from North Wales, much like the Lee House. This frame is holding up the roof. The walls are not doing any structural work. So these can be pulled out and moved around with minimum fuss. You don't need to start whacking in loads of steelwork. You can arrange the house as your requirements change over time. One of the biggest problems with so much south-facing glazing is that it can become a bit like a greenhouse, but with these motorised blinds, you can bring them down and stop all the heat coming into the building, therefore controlling the internal climate. And outside, you've got three different types of roofing. You've got really beautiful reclaimed Welsh slate here. Then you've got solar panels and a hot water solar system up on the roof. And behind that, you've got a really lovely grass roof, which has got a lot of thermal mass and the grass sedum that sits on top of it. So it's got wildflowers and grass growing in it. Provides very good insulation and reduces the visual impact of this building. In fact, the building itself has been designed to be built as a terrace, so that you can imagine these bays could just run on down a street. And the way that it was originally conceived would be that you can either buy two of these bays,
3 of these bays or 4 bays, depending on how you want the house to be. Because the house is so flexible internally, it then means you can have whatever internal design you want. The system can deal with that, and it allows for very different houses to be bought and altered over time. The house will cost about £120,000 to build. That's kind of on the upper to mid-range for its size. But what you have to think is you're going to save a lot of money on the environmental features, on the running costs of the house. And what's more is you're not going to have to shell out for stamp duty and removal men every time your circumstances change. It's when you add those things up and have a slightly more long-term vision of the way that you're paying for your house, it really starts to make a lot of sense. The concept of this house is where we should be going. It's affordable, environmental, flexible, and designed for mass production. So why is it stuck in a museum? Why aren't we building them? Why can't we buy them? Is it because it's a flight of fantasy? Well, no, because you can buy flexible housing, but, what a surprise, not in this country. In this country, we pioneered the production of housing for the masses in the 1800s. Since then, the production of all other consumer items has moved on immeasurably, giving the consumer what they want. Why hasn't this happened in housing? Well, it has, but not in the UK. I've come to Holland to see a very smart house. The house is made from a kit of parts, like this post and beam. It's a system-built house. But what is truly smart about this house is that system, the kit, is so flexible that it can be changed and adapted to meet the wishes and whims of each individual client, down to the last millimetre. The architect Robert Winkle has named this the Smart House, and you can see why. The impetus to design the smart house system came when Robert received 3 separate house commissions all at once. He realised it would take a hell of a long time to build 3 separate houses for different families with different requirements. Robert got carried away, and instead of designing 3 new houses, he came up with a housing system that could accommodate an infinite variety of different needs.
We thought maybe there's a system behind it.
Yeah.
We were going to look for it, and then we discovered the steel frame system.
So you thought, this is going to be so much work making 3 different houses. Why don't we kind of think of something clever and make less work for ourselves?
Yeah,
It's a great idea. Yeah. But did it work? Did it make less work?
No.
Robert has since sold the system on to a developer who is marketing it more like a product than a house. So how does it all work? Well, these 2 and these 2 down here, these 4 posts, they're really the secret to the whole scheme. Off those run these big steel beams that go out and sit onto the outside wall. So then you've got a solid core that goes up and holds the roof. From that, the choice is yours. Is that a patio? Is that a room? Is that glass? Is that a wall? You can do whatever you like. It's pretty much infinite. But the clever thing that they've really worked on are these joints here, because they're connecting standardly available bits of metal that I could buy anywhere, in England, in America, and Australia. And they're designed a way that they can fit all together and allow this variation. That's where it's really smart. So once you've got the frame all together, that's when the fun really starts, because you can choose how the thing's put together. In this instance, they've used really interesting materials. This flooring is just off building sites. This is just galvanized kind of flooring that goes on scaffolding. And this mesh is from the conveyor belts on potato farms. To design one, you just sit down at a computer, write down your dream list, and they can put it together exactly the way you want it. Simple as that. And the cost is known there and then without hidden and spiralling expenses, the usual experience for the first-time house builder. But let's go back to our starting point, the Victorian terrace. It's a very successful design, it must be to be so loved, and it really suits the scale of our European cities. The problem is that the houses are all pretty much the same, and we are very different. So what would happen to our cities if everyone designed their own houses? Would it become a shouting match of personal tastes? Well, apparently not if this development in Amsterdam is anything to go by. Borneo Sporenburg Docks has been completely redeveloped in the last few years in a way that we would never be allowed in the UK. Through a simple rethinking of the terrace, they've managed to come up with these wonderful houses and a fascinating modern urban environment. On this street, they sold off the plots of land individually and allowed people to build their own homes. So what did they get up to? This is the house of mountain climber Bart Vos, designed by Koen van Velden. And as you can see, it has a fully grown tree right in the middle of it. So with all of this sky and the tree and the water, it seems very kind of nature, it's a very natural kind of house. And the difference between the inside, which is very quiet and calm and kind of controlled. Was this always a very early idea behind the house?
Yes, the idea was also to reflect something like how I feel inside, to make it on the outside, controlled, organized.
This is like the biggest, best TV screen in town. There's something really lovely about how controlled the house is, and then kind of how out of control the tree is and the leaves going everywhere. I think there's something very beautiful about that.
Yeah, but that's controlled, because every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somebody passes by and a specialist that cuts the leaves. And
really? That often? He gets a haircut that often?
Yeah.
People can see in. I've seen people taking photographs and they're very interested in the house.
Yeah, all day, so in the weekend sometimes 300, 400. Just everybody pays £1, I would pay my mortgage.
You quit work. Nice staircase. It's been worth the effort though, I think.
Yes.
You think so?
Yes, it's nice. I'm often happy when I'm in. And when I close the door, it's a different world.
Bart's house was so amazing that I just couldn't resist the urge to have a look around. Everything's got a really good quality feel to it. Nice bedroom. Beautiful. There's all these doors around the house here so you can shut all the sides of the house off from the front to the back. Look at this. Nice. Beautiful kitchen. Really, really look at coffee. Very serious about coffee, obviously. It's a very nice coffee machine. I think you probably need some kind of degree to work it there. This is superb, isn't it? When I was at university, I designed loads of buildings with trees in them. And
I've never been able to make one so far, but look at this. It's a big tree and it's in the middle of his house. That's nice. It's really nice. So up here, that arrangement is repeated on every floor. You have a simple box in the middle of the smaller box inside the bigger box is the overall plot of the building. So when you get up here, you've got the constant shifting light quality in this room because of the clouds and the sun. And complementing that, you've got the constantly changing character of the water with the weather. So despite this house being very controlled, it's contrasted with these shifting natural elements, and it's a very moving place to be, actually. It's a very beautiful house, but there's something about it that makes me want to whisper, like when you're in the top of a mountain, it's a bit monastic and you're kind of like in a library. You just kind of want to creep about and whisper.
The point about Bart's house is that while it's pretty radical, it still fits in with the aesthetics of the local surroundings. And that's the key to this whole development.
To make a place like this, you can't just divvy up the land and sell it off. You need rules, planning and planners. But the secret is these rules have to be flexible so that people can express themselves and their individuality. One of the rules was that all the buildings had to respect the same height line. Another rule was that the front of the buildings had to be in a straight line. And you had to fill the site.
I think Borneo Sporenburg Docks looks great. But if you tried to make this kind of thing in the UK, the planners would probably have a heart attack. The problem is the regulations are so complicated here that it takes months of paperwork for you and I to make even the most basic changes to our homes. And it's a real shame, because places like this work.
They got what they wanted. They got what they wanted. They got what they wanted. I think you get the point. Everyone got what they wanted. But more than that, everyone got what they wanted while keeping harmony between the buildings themselves and the greater character of Amsterdam. To achieve that, there was a fantastic level of communication between government, local government, the master planners, the architects and the clients. So the whole time there was a lot of communication and talking from inception right down to completion. And unfortunately that seems to be part of the problem in the UK, that there doesn't seem to be that level of talking going on down the chain. And until we sort that out, we're not going to end up with fantastic houses like these.
Public buildings in the UK are some of the best in the world. Take the London Eye, for example. But our housing is totally stagnated. And I think it's because of antiquated planning rules and uninspired developers.
Charlie Luxton is back tomorrow, details coming up. And for more property-related information and programme details, visit channel4.com/4homes. Next up, Great Civilizations.